experimented with marijuana a time or two, and I didn't like it, and didn't inhale, and never tried it again.
I want you to listen to me. I'm going to say this again. I did not have sexual relations with that woman, Miss Lewinsky. I never told anybody to lie, not a single time, never. These allegations are false, and I need to go back to work for the American people. Thank you.
Mother, should I trust the government?
You got to hand it to the president. His injury is not holding him back from doing the business of the nation. You know, in fact, he just nominated Major General Claudia Kennedy as the Army's first female 3-star general. And I think that's great. You know, she's doing a great job. Apparently, the only thing she's having trouble with, she's having difficulty figuring out how to sexually harass herself. She doesn't know how to. What's that? Guy yells my name for no reason. I have another announcement to make. Is that what you're telling me? That I should make this announcement? You're right. You make a good point with your incoherent gibberish. Here it is. Here's my other announcement. The U.S. State Department, folks, has just issued a travel warning for all women moving past Dick Morris's table. So. I don't know. Well, that's about it for me. I just want to...
Who has had enough of these two, these tired old bags? I've had enough of them. And I'm over a political party saying how they're taking shit seriously and then saying that Hillary Clinton had no clue what was going on. She knew what was going on. You can't be smart and then play dumb. Not happening. No more. We are sick of it. We are tired of it. Thank you for being here. Salutations, friends. Who is ready for this next episode of Lie, Deny, and Deflect, which is what they're doing right now, as well as the current administration, as well as within those of the Idaho 4 case. In this episode, we're going to see how this has been going on for centuries. This is not anything new, and that the Greek system was put in place to use the system to keep hiding their secret, which is what has been going on in Greece and Mediterranean, Roman. You know, these empires are grand and mighty, and then they fall. Why is it? There's a pattern with that, which is why we're going to keep using the idiom of continuing to need to cover up in order to maintain power and control. And they do that because it's systematic as well as generational. But you know what? That's not hopeless, because more people are stepping up, more people are talking about it, and more people are going out of their way, for example, going to Minnesota from different states to learn from them, because they've been organized and they have a methodology. They have a plan of action. They have a system in place, and it's growing. And I find it interesting when we are going to learn more about this, how Minnesota was definitely involved with making of laws of this type of nature and being involved, which we'll do next week. But this time we're just going to look into the history of the system that's been set in place to continue this type of behavior. We'll continue to use the idiom of once is a mistake or accident or happenstance, twice is a coincidence, 3 times is a pattern or sometimes enemy action, which signifies that a single occurrence can be random. Repeated instances suggest deliberate, predictable, and systemic issue. Just like now with what has been now the U.S. and Israel. Now they're saying it out loud. Before it was U.S. and their allies. Well, now it's Israel and the U.S. doing that to Iran, which no one wants. We are now partnered with those people, those types. And when I mentioned last week about Zionism, how it's an ideology, but there's also extremism within that ideology. And those are the people we're talking about. These are the ones with during the whole Palestinian, which is still going on. But when they had the hostages, they were told they can no longer rape the hostages. And they went on a full-on fucking riot because they believe that is their God-given birthright. These are the type of people we're dealing with. And these people are being protected by our government, our politicians. And to further that, here, 6 years ago, how a Jewish American pedophiles hide from justice in Israel. Loophole allows pedophiles escape to Israel. And this was a year ago. Israel shielding pedophiles, CBS News, a year ago. And here, just for an AI, this is on the CBS News report, and this is by advocacy groups like Jewish Community Watch. Okay? A legal loophole has been identified where individuals accused or convicted of child sexual abuse in the United States and other countries have moved to Israel to evade justice. Between 2014 and 2020, JCW identified over 60 such individuals who moved to Israel, taking advantage of specific interlocking legal and social factors. And that's over 60 that's documented, which means that's going to be a lot more. Just like, for example, with children and people who have been sexually abused or raped, those numbers are on the lower end because, well, for here, they're trying to hide us. Those are afraid to speak up because it's been put in place to put out a narrative that they lie, that they want it for money, that they must have been under the influence. There's all these excuses. But the fact of the matter is, children don't lie. Children are not going to lie about that type of abuse because they don't have the knowledge to understand or know how to lie of that type of action. And what have we learned about the Idaho 4 case? That there was a lot of lying going on, lying, denying, and deflecting. And that lie is to help protect their secret within the Sigma Chi fraternity, and Pi Phi are the ones who help protect their secret. And there was another secret that one of the victims, Xana Kernodle, was not aware that Jack DeCoeur, his fraternity, was also part of that secret. And we learned also in the body cam that Xana was part of, that she was seen, was how Brett Payne mentioned that the Greek Council will get involved and he doesn't want that to happen. And he is military. And the amount of military influence that was there at the time of this happening is magnified. You have him, the Moy's dad, and then you have Brent Kopaka, who was clearly against all of this because of what happened to him, or what we were told of the SWAT team. He was not down with the plan. Neither was Xana, Maddie, Kaylee, Ethan, or Bethany. They were not down with the plan of keeping the secret of Sigma Chi and Pi Phi. Pi Phi helps to protect the secret of Sigma Chi. And the Greek system was designed, it was built to continue to hide the secret of grooming children so that, let's say, associates of Scott Green can take part in. Scott Green had his hands in that case from the very beginning. He was at every single press conference, every single one of them, and he had a voice. He made sure that house was knocked down before the trial even began, and there wasn't even a trial. Let's say that Brian Kohlberger's parents are legacy of Sigma Chi and Pi Phi. Not at that particular university, but of Sigma Chi and Pi Phi. And let's just say that they didn't do what others had done to their children, which is hopeful because more and more people are speaking out. More and more people who are within that generational, systemic unfortunateness, abuse, are no longer want to be a part of it and no longer believe the lies that are said in order for them to continue their generational abuse. And we don't know much about Brian's parents. We don't know much about any of the other victims' parents except for Steve and Christy. We know about their family. But we don't even know much about Jeffrey Epstein. We don't even know much about the politicians. They know everything about us, but we barely know anything about them. This is historical. Many say that the U.S. is falling as a civilization that's falling, just like the Greek, the Roman. That's a pattern. And if this type of behavior has been going on for centuries, then they are the problem that's causing this. The sexual activity within Greek and Mediterranean cultures is notable throughout their culture through many different mediums. The word homosexuality wasn't used back then, but it definitely was shown through their art, mythology, and plays, such as Plato's Symposium, which show the relationship between Socrates and a young, attractive male. Although same-sex relationships were present regularly in Greece, men were not considered homosexual and were able to have both relationships of men as well as with their wives. And then they'll supplement it with other men. Highly sexualized, hypersexualization, which has definitely been shown within our culture. Hypersexualizing both males and females through advertisements, through clothing, through movies, through TV shows. A hypersexualization, the amount of pornography that has been pumped through our society. It's out there for free. It used to be hidden and dark, and now it's for free. And those who are within those videos are being sex trafficked, are being abused to do them. It's not two separate, it's all a system. Women were not highly respected and were considered to be mad, hysterical, and possibly dangerous and destructive to men, which we see that in today's society. The Catholic Church used to have mental institutions, mental hospitals for when husbands say their wives were talking back. She's hysterical, she needs help. Or if she refused to do her duties as a housewife, she would be sent to the mental hospital. If a dad found out that their daughter liked other females, she was sent to the mental hospital through the Catholic Church. And for it to be promoted, which is sickening, Jessica Simpson, her dad, which I thought was always weird back then, gave his daughter a promise ring that she would wait until marriage to have sex with her husband, which it is weird for a dad to have that much control, power and control over a female's body, her own body. That was promoted. Oh, they're famous. She's famous. She sings, clothing. They must be prominent figures. They must know what they're talking about. This is how it's systemic, how it's generational, how it's promoted as to be a status quo. Marriage was considered for the need of procreation, and sexuality wasn't linked to marriage, and pleasure was found outside of marriage. Kind of like, sounds somewhat like Bill Clinton and Hillary. He found pleasure outside of his marriage. They had a child. You don't see Bill and Hillary be affectionate. There's no chemistry between those two that I see. It's strictly, which many people have said, it's like one of those business type relationships. It's a power couple to move through the ranks. And he did sexually assault Monica Lewinsky, and he did fucking inhale. Shut the fuck up. You really think we're that stupid? So homosexuality was institutionalized into the Greek culture, and this was apparent by the arts and practices of the people. Plays, particularly comedies, were very sexual in nature and often included overt sexual acts on stage. I just watched Caddyshack for the first time in forever, and the amount of overt sexualization that was used as a comedy. Porky's Revenge, back in the 80s and 90s, showing the Greek system and how they were behaving. That was promoted. That was to send out a message to the masses. There were also orgies to the gods that included repeated sexual acts and often the sacrifice of a child. The Greek culture was not the only one to promote homosexuality, pedestry, and the importance of the male figure in society, patriarchy. Boy brothels were also found in Rome, and the Romans believed that sexual relationships with young boys would aid their mental development, which is bullshit. That's a lie. That is not true. That's a rationale. That's a justification. It's like, and someone had commented this with power control, it is an addiction, but also this. It's a $1 billion industry for a reason. It was a way to use as leverage, which Jeffrey Epstein had used to make a U.S.-Israel relationship. Because they're aware. They know. And the amount of influence that the Greek system at the universities, as I mentioned before, are in the political world. But as I mentioned, more people are becoming aware and speaking up. And I'm going to do a video on how the laws were made to help facilitate this bad behavior. And it's no surprise that Minnesota is part of that. Now, people who are living in Minnesota are very organized. They have a methodology. And people from other states are going there for guidance because they have a system in place, which is hopeful. It's hopeful that people are driving from Florida to go there and to share. Although the Greeks viewed man-boy relationships beautiful, that came out funny, Romans often subjected boys, particularly slave boys, to violence and abuse. And that was done in Afghanistan. And that was when Brett Payne and the Moy's father were both there. They're both, as well as Brett Kopaka, they were in the Afghanistan war. And the U.S. got into trouble because they turned the other cheek when their allies, which was certain groups in Afghanistan, had slave boys and were sexually raping other little boys. And our military turned the other cheek. Just like Hillary Clinton turned the other cheek. When you turn the other cheek, you are giving consent to that bad behavior. You're allowing it to happen. Sadistic activities were enjoyed for entertainment, and this included watching women and children being raped and having sex with animals. And there's also sadistic pornography out there. It may be simulated when it comes with the kids, but it's traumatizing for the kids. Even though they're not participating in the bestiality, it's still traumatizing. That is not natural. That is not normal. That is wrong. And they know it's wrong because they have to continue to hide it. They have to find ways to keep their secret safe. They have to use systems in order to hide it because they know it is wrong. With the Epstein Files, I have several categories put together in a PowerPoint form. I'm going to show it in a category. I'll show first how the FBI sets it up, which is numerical, and then I'll do my own, and I will make sure that they are clearly identified that way. But there's a lot of shenanigans, terrible shenanigans going on, and a lot of questions that need to be answered, not only by the associates of Jeffrey Epstein, but also through the FBI, because there are many pictures that could have been taken or looked into and weren't, in my opinion. And it'll be helpful if I do have an element where I do show some of the the art history with it, because there is a lot of art history. And I use AI with that. And it was common for young boys to be sold into slavery, and socially prominent men would have slaves for their own sexual use, which was also used in Afghanistan. And what I just mentioned, there's particular cases where a general had a boy literally chained to his bed, and we were aware of that. And then think about with the Catholic Church. When you hear male survivors talk about how they were repeatedly raped after they were groomed, is horrific. These are the monsters. They make hell on earth. And to hear any type of person who is part of that to say, oh, this is hell on earth, like the current administration or even Netanyahu is saying how it's hell on earth for them, is bullshit. They're the monsters in my categories. So we'll look into Sigma Chi and Pi Phi. So Sigma Chi here, this is their crest, their insignia. And you see a lot of crest and insignia in Jeffrey Epstein's Upper East Side home as well. So Sigma Chi is a prominent international college fraternity founded on June 28th, 1855 at Miami University in Oxford, Ohio, which focused on developing values-based leaders through friendship, justice, and learning, with over 240 active chapters and 380,000 plus initiates. It emphasizes character, leadership, and lifelong brotherhood. Now, not all Sigma Chi's are doing what Sigma Chi did at the University of Idaho. There are several, but not all of them. But if those chapters, and let me say, those chapters are aware of what goes on with the other chapters. For example, how Brian Kohlberger was there because his parents are a legacy of Sigma Chi and Pi Phi, and he went and spoke with the students of Greek life. And we know that because they emphasized so much that he had nothing to do with the students and he had no affiliation with the house. And they kept saying that, which tells you he did. He spoke to those children, to those students. He had conversations with them. And the plan was to say, I don't know. I don't know what's going on here. I'm not aware of what's going on here. To lie and deny. But the thing of it is, two of them did not lie or deny. They were honest, which freaked Brian Kohlberger out. Oxford, Ohio is a small, vibrant college town covering approximately 7.5 to 7.78 square miles in the northwestern corner of Butler County. Home to Miami University, the city has a population of over 21,000 to 23,000 residents. Sounds like Moscow, Idaho. Moscow, Idaho is 6.9 square miles with about the same amount of residents, including the students. It is known for its dense, walkable, and historic feel, acting as a college town hub located about 30 to 35 miles from Cincinnati and Dayton. So it's away from the population. It's a small town in its own hub, just like the University of Idaho. Small towns know what's going on. They all know what's going on, just like Hillary knew what was going on. Just like all those politicians know what's going on. They all know what's going on. They all hear the whispers. It's their job to keep their ear on the ground. That's what they do. Key details about Oxford size and demographics. Okay. So now Pi Phi. Often known simply as Pi Phi or Pi Phi, is an international women's fraternity founded at Monmouth College in Monmouth, Illinois on April 28, 1867. It is the first National Secret College Society of Women to be modeled after the men's Greek letter fraternity. So, secret college, meaning they keep the secret safe of whomever, which in this case at the University of Idaho is Sigma Chi, secret of grooming little boys. And Pi Phi were there to make sure that other people didn't talk about it. Or if they did, they were told on. Which is why you have Maddie and Bethany and Xana, who were Pi Phi, living at that home. They were not down with what was going on. Which is why now I do believe that Kaylee and Maddie were separated because Alpha Phi was not down with what was going on. And they knew that Maddie would not be down with what's going on at Pi Phi and would be very vocal about it, as well as Xana. Now, Monmouth, Illinois is a small city in Warren County, covering an area of 4.26 square miles with a population of 8.5 to 8.8 residents. It acts as a hub for local agricultural industry, featuring a sparse suburban feel, and is home to the college. So here, another small town college with a small amount of people to be able to control a secret. And it's international. Both are international. 1800s. And this is the first national secret college. So, do other chapters throughout other states and countries, are they keeping the secret of this is no longer okay? Or this is a secret of we are allowing this to happen? Because what else would their secret be? This makes sense to me. This sounds more of what is going on than some bullshit of Brian Kohlberger came from Pennsylvania to WSU and he went on a massacre because he was just so jealous, and he didn't know how to have relationships with other women of his age, which is actually the opposite. And these are the types who partake in this absolute disgusting behavior. They don't know how to have relationships with adults. It's weird. Once they are groomed as kids, it changes their brain chemistry, it changes their body, and they grow up and they end up being stuck in that system, that cycle of abuse. And they have to hide within the status quo in order to keep their secret safe. I'm talking about the adults now. But those kids that this happens to, they are traumatized for life. In order to get them help, we have to be aware of this and to educate ourselves about this and to put systems in place to look for it and to do something about it, which I've mentioned before. I was in the youth residential facility that I worked at. I saw what was going on about it. I said something about it, and no one did anything about it. There was a mass exodus, though, shortly after something did happen. And I did mention it, and I ended up being a whistleblower, which ended up prompting me going back to school. You who are listening don't have to go to that lengths of what I did. You do what works for you. And for me, it was talking about it and standing firm. So I'm going to go into Jeffrey Epstein a little on some more that I found. So 2 different photographers went into the Upper East Side townhouse. And it also happens on Little St. James. That's how far I've gotten so far. So Jeffrey Epstein's home has definitely history, or his ex-house. It's now been sold for the 9 East 71st Street. And this was done by Habitually Chic, which this person was hesitant to even look into Jeffrey Epstein in that home, which I'm glad that she did, because it gives us a history of the decorators, who's lived there, and the why. And that there was a 7th floor that ended up being built. So here it was purchased in 1928 by Herbert N. Strauss, heir to Isidore and Ida Strauss, co-owners of renowned retailers R.H. Macy and Company, who died on the Titanic. So there's a history here. He commissioned society architect Horace Trombauer, who built one of the largest and most luxurious residences of the times on the most desirable block of the Upper East Side, which included the Frick Mansion across the street, no expense was spared on the 50-foot wide 6-story townhouse, which included imported French limestone meticulously decorated with carvings, sculpture figures, and ornamental ironworks. And it was along with a lot of entire 18th century rooms, which there is a lot of 18th and 19th century when Jeffrey Epstein was there. But he ended up dying of a heart attack and never actually living in the room in 1933. So the original mansion was only 6 stories, but Les Wexner, which his name has been a lot in the news lately, would have a 7th story added on, which you can see here. The large structure was on the top right, probably houses the elevator motor room, while the mechanics for the house are probably housed behind it. The mansion sat empty for almost a decade and would eventually be acquired in 1944 by the Roman Catholic Archbishopric of New York to become an extension of the St. Clair Hospital, and in 1962. The Daytonian and Manhattan blog has a full account of what happened during this time period. Between $250,000 and $300,000 was spent on the renovation of architect Robert J. Riley in the equipping of a new hospital. Thankfully, at least 2 of the 200-year-old interiors from France were removed and installed in the Metropolitan Museum of Art's Period Room collection. The facility was opened on September 8, 1945. The ground floor now housed a Romanesque style chapel hung with 16th century red velvet. So St. Clair's closed their doors on July 24th, 1961. The building was purchased by the Birch Wathen School, a college preparatory day school for well-to-do boys and girls from kindergarten through grade 12. The school will remain here for over 2 decades before moving uptown to 210 East 77th Street and becoming the Birch Wathen Lennox School. And then in 1989, it was purchased for $13.2 million by the billionaire businessman, the Leslie Wexner, the founder and chairman of Limited Brands, now known as L Brands. Wexner grew a business empire after starting the Limited, a clothing retailer with a restricted selection of profitable items, and later expanded his holdings to include Victoria's Secret, Abercrombie & Fitch, Express, and Bath & Body Works, which are very controversial. Victoria's Secret and Abercrombie & Fitch. There was a documentary about that clothing brand. And this I find very important. Les Wexner hired architect and interior designer to convert the townhouse back to an ultimate private residence. For the first time in half a century, the magnificent French Renaissance mansion would be a home. Except Wexner never lived there. An advisor to the millionaire told the New York Times in 1996 that he spent no more than 2 months in the house. In 1993, Wexner married Abigail Coppell, a 31-year-old lawyer, and the newlyweds relocated to Ohio, where she thought it would be better to raise children. So Les Wexner's own wife did not want to live in that Upper East Side Lenox area, is what is considered Lenox Hill, which is a very affluent area next to Central Park, found that it was not appropriate to raise children there. Gee, I wonder why. So she knew what was going on. She understood what was happening there. Just like Hillary Clinton knows what's going on, and just like a majority of the politicians today know what's going on. And there are some who are speaking out and who are being vocal. But changes need to be made. If those changes were made to help protect, you can make changes to no longer protect. So back to the slide of 2 different photographers. One was on July 6th, which was the day that he was arrested. They were quick to it, and then a few days later, they went back. So we mentioned a little bit about the Upper East Side of Manhattan. It's 1.76 to 1 square miles, 200,000 residents, and it has incorporating neighborhoods like Lenox Hill, Carnegie Hill, and Yorkville. And so this is a very prominent, affluent area near Central Park. And it's known for its high-end residential, cultural institutions, Museum Mile, and proximity to Central Park. And here's the townhouse. And across the street there is Central Park. So there's the corner of East 71st Street. And here is one of the rooms. Now, when I first saw this room, and this room is part of a suite, as you see here is the, I want to say, if I remember correctly, the bathroom, and here is the bedroom. And when I saw this color scheme, I remembered this. This was going around on the internet, and they were saying that this is Steve Colbert. I don't believe that's who he is. What I found out was this was a dad, and this is his son. And look at he's wearing the pink hair. Here's the pink room. Look at the color blocking, and look at this color blocking with the red on the little boy. Now, with what is going on is the parents either partake themselves personally in the grooming of their own children because it was done to them. This is what I mean by generational. It was done to them, so they do it to their own. Or they give permission for them to be groomed and they get paid for it. Which is what happened at Sigma Chi. Just because the parents gave permission for that to happen does not mean it's okay for it to be done. And that's how it's systemic as well. It's systematic. Other parents do it because they don't have any type of skill set. They're not in the workforce. So they use their children to gain money. Or aunts or uncles. This is a huge secret that's been going on for centuries by this particular subgroup of people. And they have managed to get into positions of power to continue it. And we are seeing this unfolding in the Epstein Files as well as the Idaho 4. I have heard this, what I told you, in the audio. Which is why it took me so long to get back to you, because hearing that information, it fucks you up. It messes with your head. Because yes, I knew there was a sex trafficking element to it, but I didn't think like that. Why would I think like that? Why would I think it would be that deep? It would be like that. But that's how it is. That's how it works. That's what I was taught in these textbooks. And hearing and reading other textbooks or required reading of children who are now in their teens or in their 20s and 30s, how they tell their stories of how it happens. And it's all over on YouTube, as well as other victims, how they talk about how they were groomed when they were little by their families, by their parents, and how they were sent to these particular schools and sent to these particular homes to be groomed and abused. We have to pay attention and listen to the victims. And we have to take this seriously, like actually take it seriously, not pick and choose who was aware and who wasn't aware, because that's bullshit. And here I have Sigma Chi, their house. Because of the magnitude of the house. And I showed in the other video that there's the 4-H administrative building that is on Greek Row. Why is there a 4-H administrative building on Greek Row? That is not the appropriate place for it to be. Agriculture department in the administrative building, not have its own house on Greek Row. So here in Epstein's house, you see a large Fowen Faience armored charger, 19th century Chinese Imarian port porcelain plates with the French royal emblem in the center. It has the French royal coat of arms surrounded by flowers and orders of Saint Michael and Saint Esprit. And see, here is a crest. And there is more of these types of crests and insignia throughout his Upper East Side home. Not so much on Little St. James, but this townhouse gives me the creeps. There's nothing warm about any of this home or the other Little St. James home. It's very clinical and questionable in many ways, which I will go through. And there's over 40 rooms in this townhouse. All right, so that was a lot of information that I've said. And probably, I want to say it's all new information, because when I talked about Sigma Chi and what they do, I've definitely read that in comments on other people's channels in the beginning of this case. Not in that much detail, but yes, in some other details. For example, that Ethan walked in on David Loach and what he was doing. And if you've seen any new pictures of David Loach, let me just pull it up right now. All right, so here he is on LinkedIn, but he changed his photo. So this one he definitely looks different. But the photo I was talking about, I'm going to have to look it up and follow up with that. But he looks more healthy in this one than he has in the last one, which reminds me a lot of Hunter. Not Chapin, but the other Hunter. How he looked like he had a serious issue going on. That's what David looked like, but different. So before I go, we're going to look at Maddie for a moment, because I want to bring something up. So this is July 4th, 2022, and she is hanging with her boyfriend at the time, Jake, for the summer. And here they are in Coeur d'Alene. And I thought it was strange that she was just surrounded by mostly guys. But here's Jake. And I've looked up these others, and they're private at the time. I haven't looked in recently. And please, as I've said before, anytime doing or looking at these Instagram sites, to not reach out to any of them. But what caught my attention, not so much of Kim being there and Ruby. Here's Sophia saying miss you, and they are Pyfie. But this right here, here's Jake, and then here is this Kyle Edwards. So when you click on that, Kyle Edwards, it is not this person. It's someone totally different. All right, so let me just show you. Here I'm on Maddie's Instagram. Kyle Edwards. You hit that. And here he is followed by her. Boy Witch, Metal Mom, Junk Lord. And here he is. That is not the same as this. So just looking through this Kyle Edwards, and so just like this, there is no association to a university, no Idaho whatsoever. It looks like he lives in one of the boroughs, goes to Texas and California. So I don't understand why someone like that is there and tagged with Maddie. Okay, it's just mostly food and his travels. What I did find interesting was this post, which is Chester Bennington of Lincoln Park. Lincoln Park at work because God is dead. Now, if you know anything about Chester Bennington, as well as the lead singer of Soundgarden, they were not down with the plan of what was going on. And they had definitely the influence. And there was a documentary that was going to be put out. And their cause of death is definitely questionable. So I'm going to leave it at there. It's a lot of information. Thank you all for listening. Keep an eye out for Jeffrey Epstein. I'm going to put up just the slides on PowerPoint, the way the FBI does it, and then I'll do my commentary with the follow-up through. I'll go ahead and kind of lump them together, talk about the art, talk about what I see that's inconsistent, and bring in the Idaho 4 with it if it's appropriate at the time. Sometimes it will be separate, sometimes it will be together. But I went ahead and turned on, not the AdSense, I'm in the process of that, but of super stickers. And I may play around with that some. So just make sure you have the subscribe button, hit that, and then when you hit the bell, make sure you do all. So, thank you all for being here. I look forward to your comments as always, and I will see you next